Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Ball Cap Bible Study. I said it right this time. Today we're rocking the Tulsa Drillers hat. It's a new one I picked up at the Love's Bargain Bin. They're only like $5.99 or 3 for 15. So I like digging through that and finding stuff. Thank you to everyone who's given me a hat. You'll be seeing your hats come around in the next few weeks. One thing I want you to know when we finish up our Sermon on the Mount series, we'll take a break for the summer. And then when we come back, what I want to do is I've one thing I've done is I've taken the restrictions off. So now these are searchable and wide open for everybody. But what I'm going to do, it takes a long time to send these out by text. So we do send some out by email to our Connect group, our Sunday school leaders at church. And then my prayer is that they're sending them out to everybody else. This gets, on a good week, we'll get over 100 views, and that's good. But what I would really like you to do, and I will repeat this and emphasize this along and along, is to subscribe. And you'll see people all the time say hit the notify button and that kind of thing. So I want you to do that, and also feel free to share these. Uh, I'm not looking for numbers. I'm not a numbers guy. You've heard me say it before. It's not about how many, it's about how. When we get the how right, the many will follow. Like tithing, it's not about how much, it's about how. So, but what I don't want to do is continue to, wear out my thumbs sending 100 texts every week. I will continue to text to one group of guys, that the coffee crew. You know who you are. You'll still receive this by text. We're going to take a break in the summer, though. After we get through with Sermon on the Mount, we'll take off July roughly and give everybody a break, and then we'll come back in the fall. Also, I'll give you my. If you get this by text, you can always text me something. My number, but my email is wcrews@qsbc.org. So that's WCREWS at qsbc.org. And if you ever have a prayer need, or if you ever have a suggestion for a ball cap Bible study, we'll do some one-offs when we come back in the fall. And then in the fall, I'll be praying about and receiving suggestions from you on different series. Might look at a series in the Old Testament. There's a lot of cool stuff in the Old Testament, maybe some things you have not seen. So I think today's Sermon on the Mount, and let's go back and review Sermon on the Mount a little bit. It's the first thing Jesus did after the temptation. That's recorded in Matthew. Many scholars think he probably repeated this over and over. Like many pastors will have a favorite sermon, or all their funerals sound alike, whatever. Obviously, this is the Lord, but the truth is the truth, and he said a lot of the same stuff often. And this particular time setting, many people believe, is up around Capernaum at the top of the Sea of Galilee, that northwest corner, and then over in the hills near where Peter was from, where Peter lived, in that area. So if you ever read the book of James, and James is the half brother of Jesus, he had Mary and Joseph for parents. James sounds a lot like the Sermon on the Mount. If you've been watching these very long, we went through James, and it's that life coaching manual from God about how Christians should live. And the Sermon on the Mount is, man, I mean, we've talked about it's a whole paradigm shift. Think about all the stuff that's in the Sermon on the Mount. 3 chapters, but yet it has the Beatitudes. It has, be salt and light. It has, you have heard, but I say. It has how to pray and fast. Don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. About giving and tithing. The model prayer, the Lord's Prayer, is in there. Just, don't cast your pearls before swine. Store up your treasures in heaven, not on earth. On and on and on. The famous one that everybody loves. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. One of my favorite life verses. Therefore, do not worry for the morrow, sufficient for the day is the evil thereof. Wrapping up chapter 6, just on and on and on and on. All these things. Why do you worry about the speck in your brother's eye when you need to pull the log out of your eye? You know, judging by the same standard that you're going to be held accountable for. Just all this stuff that, you know, the golden rule is in there. So it is just, I've heard somebody say, it may have been Chuck Swindoll one time, but he was talking about the Sermon on the Mount. And he said, it's like when you were a kid, did you ever take that frozen concentrated orange juice and right out of the can, you know, with a spoon, just, ooh, this is, wow, this is too much. You know, that's why you have to, you know, add water to it, because you really can't take this all at once. So I would just encourage you to read the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, probably at least 4 times a year, maybe even once a month, because this is what God expects of us. This is how, I mean, the words of Jesus, and in most Bibles, they're read, this whole, all 3 chapters. And so we talked about how Matthew is, in his entire gospel, he's demonstrating the authority of Christ. And certainly we'll see at the end when we wrap it up, he speaks with authority because he has authority. You know, I've heard a lot of people get up and speak like they are in charge, and they really don't have any authority. You know those people. But today, let's look at something that I think we've got our hardcore Southern Baptist Bible. Actually, it's somebody said, what does it's Holman Christian Standard Bible. Now they've dropped the Holman. I think you can go to Mardel's and it's just called the Christian Standard Bible now. But it used to be called HCSB. So last week, if you remember what we talked about, we talked, hang on, I gotta find it. We talked about the wide and the narrow gates. So, you know, just a couple of verses, but really the important thing, the takeaway there is there's a wide path and there's a narrow path. There is, you know, the old saying, there's 2 ways to do things, God's way and the wrong way. And I think the critical point for us to know as believers, one, we want to encourage as many people to come over to the narrow path, go through that narrow gate that leads to life. But even beyond that, we want to make sure there is no doubt that it is perfectly clear and obvious that we're on the narrow path. We don't want to be confused with the people on the wide path, because then why would they want to come be with us? So just remember that part. Also, and this hurts. It hurts to read it. It hurts to think about it. But God doesn't hold back the truth. Many is more than few. Wide is the path that leads to destruction, and many there are that go by. Narrow is the gate, and few there are. So many is more than few. So we shouldn't be shocked when we're not the majority. Just, I'll leave it at that. Okay. So it transitions from wide gate or wide path and narrow path. Listen to this. I think this is something we don't do. I think most people in America today are more than happy to buy into about anything. Let's try the next diet. Let's try the next good thing. Let's try the next miracle cure. Let's try the next way of life. Let's try the next identity. You know what I'm saying? Listen to this. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravaging wolves. Wow. Did you know that came from Sermon on the Mount? Beware of false prophets who come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves, ravaging wolves. Listen to this. You will recognize them by their fruit. That is so very important. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. I promise you, what someone really believes comes out in their behavior, in what they do, how they live, how they treat other people. It's not me talking, it's Jesus. You'll recognize them by their fruit. Are grapes grafted from thorn bushes? Wow. Are grapes gathered? It says gathered, not grafted. Sorry. I need my, you know what? I'm gonna put my glasses. This now we're at the comedy portion of our show. All right. This will help. Oh yeah, there we go. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree produces good fruit, but a bad tree produces bad fruit. Now, are we capable of producing bad fruit sometimes? Sure. We're human, we're sinners, we have that nature, we're fleshly, but man, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. Every tree that doesn't produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So you'll recognize them by their fruit. There's a really deeper, harder section to read, but we're going to stop there because I don't want this to be an hour long. But I will say this. Many of you have heard me tell this story before. I may have even done it on these recordings. But when I was a little boy, went to my great-grandparents' house in Cushing, Oklahoma all the time. And they had one of those gardens in the back. They had strawberries, green beans, tomatoes, all the stuff. And you know, I thought they were really, really old, but they were only in their 70s when I went up there. Next door in the backyard, and this is one of those neighborhoods that, you know, it had a alley where you put your trash cans and the trash truck came through. It was an old neighborhood. Well, next door in the backyard was the biggest pear tree you've ever seen in your life. And I mean, it was full of pears. I don't know what it was about Cushing, but it had some soil that would just grow stuff. And underneath this pear tree would be 100 pears on the ground, rotting, you know, just had fallen off the tree. And in the tree, no kidding, the tree was like 50 feet tall. It was huge. And not just because I was a little kid. I mean, it was big. You couldn't wrap your arms around it. And these pears were just begging to be picked. I mean, even I could reach them at only being, you know, 7 years old. I'd reach up, grab a pear right off the tree. Oh man, just juice running down your face. It was unbelievable, sweet. Those big green, you know, Bartlett pears. Anyway, I never once walked into that backyard and looked up and said, wow, look at that orange tree. You know why? Because it's fruit. It declared what it was. And it dropped fruit if it could move, it would leave a trail of fruit everywhere. That's how we need to be. You're a Christian tree if you love the Lord, if you believe in his word. You stop looking like a worldly tree. You should be people should be wanting to pick what you have, the fruit you bear. They should want some of that. It should be obvious by what's beneath you and around you and on you, who you are, your fruit. So don't buy into the false prophets. You'll recognize them by their fruit. But I think even more importantly, people need to recognize you by your fruit and me by my fruit. It's a we thing. And I'm going to do a funeral Tuesday. And I've been asked not to be real heavy with evangelism or, you know, that kind of thing. But there is something I'm going to say. One, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, but two, there's a verse in 2 Thessalonians. You've heard it. I do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, but we do not grieve like those who have no hope. At some point in a person's life, they have to come to terms with which group they're in. Are you part of we? Or are you part of those? Are you part of we who don't grieve like those who have no hope? Are you part of those who have no hope? People should be able to see which group you're in based on your fruit. All right. Love you guys. Have a great day. We've got about 2 or 3 more weeks to finish up the Sermon on the Mount, and then we'll be done. Y'all go bear some good fruit this week.